Rolling.
Rolling. First BTC, take 6. Action.
A Blakademik. If you Google what a Blakademik is, you'll see it's a black person of any age, highly intelligent, normally articulate, and often curious, with enough wit and charisma to make you second guess your own point of view. Blakademiks are rarely shy and enjoy talking, so what I've gone and done is got some of my people to have a chat about everything from sport to politics, music to world affairs and more. Hi, my name is Jordan and I'm joined by some familiar faces, some friends and some colleagues here. I've got with me for our first debate, Hugh, Addy, Henry and the fantastic Claudia. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, good. How come only Claudia gets to be fantastic?
This is the thing.
What's going on?
He's kind of doing hashtag me too, that's it. It could be coming to us.
The facts!
Fantastic.
Oh,
Thank you.
What are you hating
it's
for?
on.
Checks in the post.
If my wheelchair wasn't over there, I'd be gone, you know.
Don't be hating. Guys, to kick off the very first debate I want to have on this all Blakademik is about the B word, about Brexit. And I'm interested to know from you guys how you guys think that Brexit will impact, should it happen, impact the black community. Okay, I'll kick off and then I want you guys to kind of come back at me. For me, the concerns that I have for Brexit, for the black community, is that I think if we all agree that immigration seems to be the driving force for people voting to leave the European Union, that for me is a concern to black people in particular, because when I hear we want to control our borders, what I really hear is we want to make sure the others no more come in. And then my concern from that is, once we control people coming into the country, the others, how can we figure out a way now to try and get the others that are in out of the country? Am I just being am I exaggerating? Am I going a little bit too ham on that one?
I think you're going a little bit too ham. We've been in this country in small numbers and large numbers for hundreds and hundreds of years. I think we are so deeply embedded, so deeply rooted at various levels of society, both in sport, culture, and increasingly in politics. You can't get us out. No, the country would fall apart. I think people realise this increasingly. Part of me wants Brexit to go ahead in the most car crash fashion, just to show these people who want Empire 2.0 what will happen. We'll be blaming the EU, blaming, you know, post-war migration for this country no longer being great. Okay, we leave, or you shut down, you know, the whole of the European Union, and see what happens if you really do go for your Empire 2.0. It'll be a case of be careful what you wish for. Because a lot of those people who went for Brexit, I don't think they realised just how difficult it was going to be. The implications for immigration, for jobs, for the National Health Service, a whole range of things, for social cohesion within this country, and also for those Brits who have had over the last 40 or so years the freedom to travel all around the European Union, to settle in the south of France, to settle in Portugal.
Okay,
this will come back.
I'm going to pick up on just so many points. I'm going to pick up on one of the points you made in the fact, how are people going to try and get rid of the immigrants who are so embedded in UK society over the hundreds of years. That's what the government's been doing for, the last 5 years, 7 years. Remember that hostile environment which obviously brought about the Windrush scandal. That's exactly what the government's been doing off the back of the pressures from the UK, the pressures of people wanting to leave the EU. That's been government policy for years. How much going to bring down immigration?
It's not going to happen. I mean, first of all, I like your style, the fact that when it all goes wrong, you're going to be sitting there going, I told you all.
Either way, I don't want people to suffer, but partly I feel sometimes they must feel the pinch.
But I think we also got to be careful not saying black people as one homogenous group, because we are all different out there, and there are, I don't know what the views are around this table, but there are some black people who voted for Brexit.
So let me hit who, in terms of our community, what are your fears and concerns that you have should Brexit happen?
Yeah, I mean, well, Brexit's going to happen. But
It's nice to see you optimistic.
But I think there are two strands to it. I agree with what Ade's saying. First things first, there's not one black homogenous group. For me, there's two strands to it. It's how people are going to be affected economically, and then the second one is how people's lives will be affected almost personally, which is, you mentioned the things that have happened since Brexit, the likes of xenophobia, you talk about the Windrush generation, a hostile environment, etc. Those sort of aspects I would probably call personal life, because economically, black British people are in different classes and different economic groups. Some of them, for me, it boils down more to class than race, and there are certain classes that will be very detrimentally affected, and many black people fall into the classes that will be very detrimentally affected by a negative outcome economically for everyone.
Especially if we can't export goods to the European Union. Exactly. 44% of our trade goes out to the European Union. People tend to trade with those countries that are closest to them. So all this talk of sailing off to the sunlit uplands of a wonderful Brexit future post the European Union, where we're going to be trading with Canada, be trading with New Zealand, South Africa, maybe India, Australia, well, they're going to want something too.
Well, I take your point, Henry, but do you, in terms of the black community, and I accept that we're not one homogenous group of people, what are your concerns specifically for the black people in this country? When,
even though I don't think they're going to be able to get us out, right? You know, we've been embedded here too long. We are kind of indivisibly woven into the warp and weft of this country. I think if it goes wrong and the economy shrinks, remember what happens in this country whenever there's a pinch point, whenever the economy tanks. So in the early 70s, the early 80s, the early 90s, people turn in on themselves and they look to blame those who look like they belong least to this country, right? And so they'll look at people of colour, of course, and they'll look at those of us who look most foreign.
I think they'll also look, as they have done for the last, you know, since Blair and the turn of the century, towards Eastern European people that have come to the country. I don't think they'll be
if they're speaking Polish loudly.
I don't think they'll be exempt from the same criticisms that people from those communities are just
do you know my issue with Brexit is I don't really think anyone knows what Brexit is or what it means, and nobody really.
You take this Danny Dyer case.
All of that to one side, because I hear people saying, well, we want Brexit because we want to claim our country back.
Yeah.
Where did the country go? We want Brexit because we want to come out of the European Union, the monetary union. We've got our pound. We want Brexit because we want to trade with countries outside of Europe.
We can trade with those countries.
And that's why I'm concerned. Go on.
But to me, I don't think things are going to change that much.
To say that, and I have to say, just listening to all of you, we're just really getting that usual negative rhetoric when we're talking about Brexit, when we're talking about leaving the European Union. And I want to touch on something that you spoke about a little bit earlier, Henry, just that quarter of the black British community who voted to leave. And I think if you look at the motivations as to why they voted to leave, you can potentially find the positives in the UK after we leave the EU.
I'm not being negative, I'm just saying we don't know. And I think that's the big problem. Is you don't want to go into the unknown. You don't drive your car at night with the lights off, you know, down the North Circular.
If you do look at the reasons why people from the black British community voted to leave, is that worry over their jobs, the worry over services is actually pretty much in line with the main reasons why many white people voted to leave, including immigration. Now there was a real worry from the African and Caribbean community that the jobs that they were going for was now going to be going towards people in the EU. There was less risk in employing people from the EU because there'd be less risk in regards to visas. There'll be less fines potentially on employers in terms of landlords as well, less risk to give people from the European Union homes and properties. Now when we leave the EU, that could change. In fact, we are seeing that the figures out earlier this year from the Office of National Statistics were showing that actually there's a reduction in the number of people migrating from the EU here to the UK, and also an increase in the number of people from the EU going out to going back to.
What about people outside of the EU coming into the UK?
But my point is, and we're also seeing a reduction there. But my point is, if that's the case, then that means there's going to be more jobs. And if that is the case, that potentially well, you know, it all depends on how we do leave the EU. But potentially could mean more jobs for people from the African Caribbean community, which is why some of those voted to leave in the first place.
But I think our government focused on the wrong thing. We were focusing on industries such as steel and car and the service industries, which we can't compete against India Africa and China because their labour is so much cheaper, and we should have been looking for the future and looking into technology. And until we start looking at where we can take the country in the future, those jobs are still, people are still going to be fighting for jobs. And that, I think, was the crux of Brexit. People were worried about their future employment.
Hugh, I'm a man that likes my planting. I like my planting food. I'm a planting man.
Boiled.
Don't tell me we're going to lose planting in the Brexit as well.
It might sound frivolous. But it might sound frivolous. But in terms of a trade deal to get our food into the country, could that be something that impacts our people more than other people? For example.
No one mentioned this.
Yeah, I mean,
no,
well, it's interesting because, of course, we talk about all the countries that we want to do trade deals with, and we talk about how amazing it's going to be with the likes of the US and China. And the reality is, I feel like if we do get to a really negative economic point, then all of these Commonwealth countries who have been sitting there saying what was the point, and English people, British people have been saying what's the point of the Commonwealth, and what, you know, when we saw the celebrations there were so many question marks over what does the Commonwealth bring anymore. But I actually think some of those countries are going to be the most lenient in terms of trade deals and say,
you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And say, well, why not? If it benefits their economics, it will benefit them economically. If they're saying, well, if you can't get, right, maybe not planting, but certain foods, from other parts of, well, we've got sugar or we've got whatever, and you can get it from us cheaper, and this is part of the relationship that we've always had, and this is why we're part of the Commonwealth. That will probably come to the fore. But it might be cheaper.
But you know what? The elephant in the room, though, with all those countries out of the EU, especially Africa, is China. They're all doing their main trades and their main deals with China. They're going to look to them before they look to us. And I think sometimes I worry. I don't want to be negative because I don't know what's going to happen. It could be a land of milk and honey once Brexit happens. You know, we could all be styling it out. But I think they're going to be thinking, why do we go to the UK? China can do stuff cheap, but China are building roads all over Africa. They're building airports all over Africa. They're in there. What have we been doing to garner those relationships?
I think politically you will garner favour in some of those countries, maybe not in Africa, but the Caribbean in particular, if you say, right, so many people in those countries have family in the United Kingdom, and so many of those people won't want to see their family in the United Kingdom struggling. If you're a politician in the Caribbean and you say, we have a strong relationship with the United Kingdom, this special relationship will continue after their Brexit, even if they're into difficulties, I think you might garner favour politically.
Is our government doing that? Are they making that effort to go to the Caribbean now and with open arms?
I think at the moment they have to.
I mean, that Windrush generation thing. I mean, that
didn't help. That absolutely didn't help.
America, Asia. That seems to be that these are the countries that Liam Fox, International Trade Secretary, has been focusing on. But in terms of family members in the Caribbean and also family members in Africa, over the last 4 or 5 years, actually potentially more, the struggle to get family members from this country has been so serious, it's been so difficult. Since
even for funerals.
It's just in getting a spouse, children over, which when it used to be something which was just a matter of fact, you could easily get family members. That changed, and that was largely because of an increase in number of people coming from the European Union states, and that potentially could ease.
That's why some of the people voted for Brexit.
And yes, indeed, that's exactly why the number of people you're seeing in detainment centres over immigration issues, the likes of which you hadn't seen before, and that was again largely because of the large influx of people coming into the UK, and that was largely from the European Union. So potentially you could see people from black African Caribbean communities more so coming in a lot easier than before.
That was the pitch. That was the pitch that a lot of the Brexiteers, and I've got friends, in UKIP, in the Conservative Party, in various parties, and that was what they were selling.
Do you believe them?
Listen, I'm a journalist, news and current affairs journalist.
Do you believe them? I'm asking, do you believe them?
What do you think?
Okay,
what do you think?
There you go.
I mean, I do not think that's going to happen because the government still has a net migration figure of the tens of thousands per year. They're nowhere near it. I think net migration is still running about 283,000 more people coming in.
Off the back of the Windrush scandal, Sajid Javid, that he seems to be.
He doesn't want to say that it's tens of thousands.
He's easing up on this and that hostile environment, on this figure to try and bring migration down. And not only that, he's actually also introduced ways of making it easier for people working in the NHS, working for the NHS, if they're going to be coming in, if people from other countries are going to be coming into the UK to work for the NHS, he's now trying to introduce ways of making that easier.
But also, what's fighting against it is ideology, and he doesn't care about the economic interest.
People getting older also means more people, more pressures on the NHS, more pressures on education, more pressures on health services, as I mentioned, more pressures on housing. So
but Claudia, we sent a probe out into space, right, that shot into an asteroid travelling at 48,000 miles an hour, and you're saying we can't solve a little problem with the population in this country. People don't make no sense.
Let me be, you might be living in an asteroid.
I think it'll be easier. I think it'll be easier. I'm conscious, as long as it's accessible, you know what I mean?
Hugh, let me first I'm asking into the pot now. Travel. So now I think probably most of our parents' generations weren't massive travellers in terms of travelling abroad. The current generation of, say, under 30s, they're travelling all over Europe. Like it's
our parents know a lot more about visas.
This is true.
And documentation.
This is true.
So a lot of British kids have been travelling freely, just using their passport, going to the airport, maybe paying for an ESTA, just going online, paying £6 or £7 or whatever it is to go somewhere.
This isn't necessarily unique to the black community, but
the young and older.
Well, yeah. Do you think that when Brexit happens, travelling freely to Germany, France, Spain, wherever could be an issue and make us more inward looking? Because if it costs 3 times as much to go to Germany, you're less likely to.
I don't think the United Kingdom are going to be able to take with both hands. And if they go for what they want economically regarding the customs union or the single market, if they try and get what they want, I think the economy is more important to the United Kingdom than immigration. They don't want to say it because so many people voted along motivations to do with immigration. So no one will come out and say, look, we can't give you what we said we were going to give you regarding immigration, because if we do, they won't give us what we want on the economy, and that will crush our country. So we have to go for what we want on the economy, and that means we're probably going to be dictated to regarding immigration.
You're calling them liars.
I'm not calling anyone a liar because I don't want to get fired.
I'm stirring it up, man.
But the thing, that's the reality. You're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it. And so I really feel like we're going to have to go for what is the best case scenario economically, because our country has functioned using the stock exchange, using London's financial hub to drive its value for so long that it can't function without it. And so immigration and free movement, which I'll put into that pot, we will have to have new stipulations.
We'll have to compromise heavily on free movement.
It might not be difficult. I don't think it will be difficult. I think we still have the relationship where people value the educational system in the United Kingdom. They value the workforce that's produced in the United Kingdom. Just that companies in Germany will still want to hire British people. They might have to be qualified to a certain level, but I don't think they're going to try and make it difficult at any level.
And when we're talking about free movement to EU states, have we seen what's going on in the EU states, in Italy, France, Germany?
They're clamping down heavily.
We're seeing the clamping down, also seeing a rise of the far right, also seeing a rise in populism. In terms of, obviously we are talking about that reaction straight after we voted to leave the EU, but it's nothing compared to what you are seeing in other EU states, in terms of Poland and other Eastern European countries as well. And so when you're talking about young people travelling there, what kind of world are they going to travel to? Is this something, will be open arms, will be welcoming?
See, therein lies the problem, and that you've hit the nail on the head there. When Europe breaks up, like we are breaking up in this way, because this could be a domino effect on other countries, Europe becomes so unstable. It's one of the continents that's had the most wars out of any continent in the world, and that's why it's so important that we stick together. Because that destabilizing effect that it's going to have. A lot of people are disagreeing with what Italy are doing, and I do have a problem with what they're doing, shutting the doors. But in one way, I understand, because they've had to bear the brunt of the immigration.
Very old soft underbelly, aren't they?
Yeah. Nobody else is sharing in this burden. they're all coming into Italy, and they're taking them, and they try to, you know, and they do have some far right tendencies. But none of the other countries, but none of the other countries is putting up their hands and saying,
well, Germany did. Look what happened.
Germany.
Mutti Merkel said, "Come to Mutti."
Yeah.
What?
I've been to these countries where these people are prepared to jump in a burning boat with their babies, to do anything to get out there, and that is going to continue to happen.
Let me just wrap up, guys, with how do you feel that, what do you think in terms of day-to-day life for black people in this country when Brexit happens? Do you feel there'd be an obvious cultural shift, attitude change towards black people, or as Adi said at the start, do you think that not really much actually will change?
The picture is very, very mixed. There is a significant element of the British public that accepts the post-war settlement on migration, that Britain has lots of different colour in it, that the national football team is 60% black, mixed race, etc. Right? You know, the athletics team, all of that, representing a wonderful 21st century Britain. But there is a core, and it's getting smaller as generations go by, that's still very, very resentful, that feels that Britain has lost something great. When it looks and sees you on TV, you, it feels very angry.
Finally, does anyone think that we should have a final vote on the deal once it comes, or do you take the view of, and that's your job, you're the government, you guys work out what's best for our country?
It will be very difficult, very difficult for Theresa May to introduce another referendum or another vote on the type of terms we leave the EU, and quite frankly, I don't know how much of an appetite there is, even from Remainers, for another election or another vote of any kind. I think Theresa May's already just put the car wash on that, and just this week, I don't know how likely we are to see that vote.
If there is a common consensus found in Parliament, and all the MPs vote, it comes out that amongst the MPs, the people that have been elected by the people of the country, if you call that the will of the people, come out and say, right, we have a common consensus now, and Theresa May has managed to reach a majority in Parliament for this Brexit approach, whatever it goes for, and this deal that's been. If that happens, it would be very similar to the Iraq War. The only way of proving or disproving that they were right on the day is in hindsight. And it's over time.
I think Apple are working on a hindsight app. It's coming up. Sort everything.
I would pay
trillions. I didn't even know that word existed. A trillion.
Hey guys, thank you very much for your contributions. With 7 months to go until the deal has to kind of go through, and Brexit's got to get sorted. I think it's a case of seatbelts on and strapping. If you like what you saw, do not forget to follow us on all of our social channels. We're on YouTube, Blakademik TV. We're on Twitter, just Blakademik. Instagram, it's all .blakademik. And we're on Facebook, it's all Blakademik as well. Leave us a comment, leave us a review, any ideas for Debate Matter. Hit us up.